What if the person who takes care of your children, the person you see every day, was living a complete secret life? A life so brilliant it could change the history of art. But no one, not even you, knew anything about it. This isn't a fictional story. This is the real, unbelievable story of a nanny named Vivian Maier, a woman who spent her life in the shadows observing the world through her camera lens and taking pictures that would later be considered masterpieces of the 20th century. But she never showed them to anyone. She died poor and unknown, and her secret was almost buried with her forever if it weren't for an old box, bought by chance at a cheap auction. Today, we will uncover the mystery of Vivian Maier. Every great story begins with a pivotal moment, and our moment begins in 2007, in the city of Chicago. The hero of this beginning is not a famous artist or a great historian, but a young man named John Maloof, a real estate agent and amateur historian who was looking for old photos for a book project about his neighborhood's history. His search led him to a local auction house where his eyes fell on a large box filled with thousands of undeveloped negatives. He didn't know exactly what was inside, but he gambled $400 and won the box, hoping to find a few useful pictures for his project. When John returned home and opened the box, he didn't find photos of historic buildings or streets as he had hoped. Instead, he found himself immersed in a sea of faces and daily life. Photos of elegant women, children playing in the streets, marginalized workers, and fleeting moments of life in New York and Chicago during the 1950s and 60s. The photos were powerful, honest, and incredibly artistic. Each picture told a complete story, but more importantly, one question urgently presented itself. Who was this genius photographer that no one had ever heard of? There was no clue in the box except for a name written in pencil on one of the envelopes: Vivian Maier. John Maloof began an arduous search for this mysterious name. He searched the internet, old records, but to no avail. The name was not associated with any known photographer. For 2 full years, the box and its treasures remained in a corner of his house, a silent enigma. John began to doubt the value of what he possessed, until one day he decided to scan some of the photos and post them on a photography blog, asking for the opinion of experts. The response was immediate and astounding. Comments and emails poured in from photographers and art critics from all over the world. They were all stunned by the quality of the photos, the artistic composition, the ability to capture the human spirit in a single moment. John realized he didn't just have old pictures. He had a massive body of work by an unknown artist. This realization ignited a new passion in him. He had to know who Vivian Maier was. He resumed his search, and this time it led him to an obituary published in a local newspaper just a few days before his search. The obituary was for a woman named Vivian Maier, who had died at the age of 83. The notice mentioned that she had worked as a nanny for several families in Chicago. He had finally found her, but he was too late. Vivian had died before the world could discover her genius. But this discovery opened the door to an even bigger mystery. How could a nanny possess such extraordinary talent? And why did she never share her art with anyone? John Maloof began a new journey, this time not in search of a name, but in search of a life. He contacted the families for whom Vivian had worked. Through their testimonies, the image of this mysterious woman began to take shape. Vivian Maier was born in New York in 1926 to a French mother and an Austrian father. She spent most of her childhood in France and returned to New York in the 1950s to begin her work as a nanny. She was a tall, imposing woman who walked with long strides like a soldier. She always wore men's hats and long coats and spoke with a strange French accent. She was a very private, introverted, and eccentric character. She never married and had no children. She insisted on having her own private bathroom, always locked her room, and forbade anyone from entering. But the one thing that never left her side was her camera. A Rolleiflex camera was perpetually hanging around her neck. On her days off, she would take the children she cared for on long trips to the poor and marginalized neighborhoods of Chicago, not for them to play, but for her to take pictures. She photographed everything: a moment of joy, a look of sadness, a strange interaction on the street, and even her self-portraits, captured through her reflection in shop windows and mirrors. She had a unique eye that captured what others didn't see. The family she worked for remember her as a mysterious woman. She was very well read, with strong political opinions, but at the same time she hid a dark side. She would hoard stacks of newspapers and magazines in her room to the point where there was no longer space to walk. This behavior, now known as hoarding disorder, was part of her secret. Her locked room didn't just contain newspapers, it contained her real treasure: hundreds of rolls of undeveloped film, audio recordings, and home videos. She was documenting the world around her by every possible means, but she kept it all to herself. As Vivian grew older, her financial situation deteriorated. She became homeless for a time, saved by 3 of the children she had once cared for, who were now adults. They rented an apartment for her and paid her bills, in return for her kindness. But they knew nothing of her photographic treasure. Her belongings, including the boxes of photos, were kept in a storage unit. When she stopped paying the rent for the storage unit, its contents were sold at auction, the very same auction where John Maloof bought the first box. After connecting all the dots, John realized that the box he bought was just the tip of the iceberg. He began to search for the other buyers from the auction and managed to acquire most of Vivian's other belongings. In the end, he had collected nearly 150,000 negatives, most of which had never been developed or seen by anyone, including Vivian. John began to develop these films, and with each new photo, the magic of Vivian Maier grew. Her photos were a window into the soul of mid-20th century America. They were not just documentation, they were pure art. She would take bold, close-up pictures of people, sometimes without them noticing, giving her photos a rare honesty and spontaneity. She had a unique eye that captured what others didn't see. The story of Vivian Maier became a global phenomenon. Exhibitions of her photos were held in major museums around the world, from New York to London and Paris. Books were published about her work, and a documentary titled Finding Vivian Maier was produced and nominated for an Academy Award. The unknown Nanny became, after her death, one of the giants of 20th century photography, placed alongside artists like Diane Arbus and Robert Frank, but the posthumous fame raised deep ethical and philosophical questions. Why did Vivian not share her art with the world? Did she want her work to remain secret? Do we have the right to display the photos that she chose to hide? Some believe she lacked self-confidence or feared rejection. Others suggest that the act of taking the picture itself was the reward for her. She didn't care about the final result or the opinions of others. She found satisfaction in the moment of capture, in the silent communication between her and her subject. Perhaps her art was her personal sanctuary, a secret world she didn't want anyone to invade. Regardless of the reason, Vivian Maier left behind a dual legacy: a treasure of stunning photographs and an even bigger mystery about her life and intentions. A story of a woman who lived among us, saw the world in a unique way, and kept her vision to herself. A story that reminds us that genius can exist in the most unexpected places, and that some of the greatest artists may live and die without us ever knowing them. And so the Nanny Vivian Maier became a legend after her death, a woman who lived a double life, a great artist, hidden in the guise of an ordinary woman. Her story poses an important question to us all. Is art only complete when it is seen by others? Or does its value lie in the act of creation itself? No one has a definitive answer, and perhaps that is the most magical part of the Vivian Maier mystery. She left us her photographs, but she took her secrets with her. What do you think of Vivian Maier's story? And do you believe it was right to publish her work? Share your opinions in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more true and amazing stories. See you in the next story.